pronounce it correctly, and she is going to talk about revival of metal craft in Dhamra, Bangladesh. Again, your presentation is 15 minutes.
I'm Doito Bonotulshi, and I'm a recent graduate from the Architecture Department of Prague University. So this was my thesis paper for my undergraduate degree, and I'm a little overwhelmed with the panelists, so I hope you take it with a grain of salt. So my project is the revival of metal craft in Cambrai, and my paper is named Mold Town. So why Mold Town? I hope I get to answer this question as I'm going along with my presentation. So let's get back to the basics. What is culture? Culture shapes our way of life. It creates a sense of identity not just for individuals but for a community. And one of the primary elements that shaped our culture, especially in Bengal and the Indian subcontinent, was metal. Metal was used in our daily life, from utensils to deities to adornments to in a more modern time in accommodation, in transportation, and even manufacturing tools. Metal dates back to 3000 BC in the Black Sea and Persian Gulf. From there, it made its way to Mohenjo-daro, to Bengal through Pal and Sen dynasty in around 800 AD. And arts and crafts play a very important role in Bengal, and it was proven by unearthing of Mohastangor, Bobura, and in recent times Wari Boteshwar in Norshing. One of the things that we unearthed were sculptures and coins from all of these places, which not only let us know about their daily life, but about the origin and the history of these cultures in Bengal. So one of the important things that why Bengal is important in metal history is the way metal was casted in this part of the region. It's a practice that has been around since the 3rd millennium BC, and it's called the lost wax method. And very interestingly, this is something that is still practiced in Bangladesh, especially in areas such as Cambrai. The method is interesting because it starts off with a wax sculpture, which is then casted around with clay and then burned in a kiln. As a result, the clay itself melts, the wax melts, and we get a hollow mold, and hence my project's name, a mold. It is then filled with molten brass and then refired, and then in turn we get a metal structure. So coming to Cambrai. One of the interesting facts of Cambrai is the fact that around in 1950s, just a few, not even 100 years ago, there were 30 villages working solely on metal craft. However, as time goes by, and in 2010, there are just 5 families who are working for it. It's very alarming that such an important part of our history and an important part of our culture is diminishing. So let's take a look at why is it fading away. There are 3 main reasons why it is fading, one of them being cheaper alternatives, such as due to industrial revolutions, we got melamine and we got ceramic, which is cheaper and a faster alternative for metals, which takes around a month to create one product. However, is it a bad thing? I hope to answer it as I go along my presentation. The second and more important problem is the middleman. For example, if you buy a pair of bangles from the artisans themselves, you buy it with 200 taka. However, if you buy it from a large boutique in Dhaka, you buy it with 2,000 taka. That's a huge gap for something that you can just get very near to Dhaka. And the third is the expense that is associated with each of the product. As I said, it's a very time-consuming product. as a result, and each of them are casted separately, and you can reuse the molds because it's made out of mud. As a result, it becomes expensive, but at the same time, the artisans or the people who make this craft are equally important, not just the craft itself. One might ask why it should be revived. It's a craft, it might just go and we get new crafts. But there are several reasons why it should be revived. One of the main things is that it's timeless. The craftsmanship, the uniqueness, the aesthetic, everything is very, very original to our region. Along with that, the Pal dynasty, which I first talked about, it's a living cultural fossil of that time. It's highly durable, as we all know, and especially the way the metal is casted in this part of the region makes it even more durable. Metal itself has high scrap value, as you can use almost 100% of it. And nowadays we all talk about sustainability and using local materials. And metal is something which completely uses local raw materials. Even the clay is sourced locally. And lastly, tangible history. The instruments, the institutions, and the workshops all are accommodated in or around buildings and neighborhoods which date back to 100 to 150-year old. So it's not just an intangible culture that I'm talking about, it's tangible buildings and neighborhoods. So let's look at another cultural artifact or another craft which was revived in Bangladesh, Nokshikata. Just a few decades ago, this was almost facing extinction. It was a daily product that people used to use in their home. They used to make it in the courtyards and use it for themselves. However, as again cheaper alternatives came along, the demand of it diminished. But an interesting thing happened. There were a few local NGOs which started working with these artisans, and not only did they develop their skills, which led them, and they kind of connected those artisans to a larger market in an urban settlement. Along with that, they also connected designers who would help these artisans come up with newer and faster designs. As a result, as we all know, Nokshikata is not just famous nationally right now, it's famous internationally. People from all over the world come to Bangladesh, and when they're going back, Nokshikata is one of those things that they take to just hang on a wall in their home. It's not used anymore. So the interesting fact is, it's not a daily wear anymore, it's a luxury item, it's a novelty item. So this shift of use actually helped Nokshikata be revived. And along this entire process, one of the most benefited group of people were the artisans themselves. So my learning from this entire thing was the fact that the craft and the consumer needs to be in close proximity. You can't have several steps between them to actually revive it. So Dhamrai, one of the, according to Bangladesh Bureau of Statistics, the biggest shift was, like I said earlier, there were 30 villages working for metal. Right now, the economic activities have shifted drastically, and only 4 to 5% are working in this cottage industry. And you can't even blame them. Almost everyone who works in this metal craft industry are living below poverty line. So, if I'm looking from their point of view, there's absolutely no reason for them to continue this craft. However, as I've already mentioned, that this is a very important part of our culture and our history. So, in order to save this culture, we actually need to be able to revive the people and the neighborhood who are working closely with this culture, with this craft. So my paper aimed to shed light on the revival of metal craft through the revival of the neighborhood and the people connected to it. Along with that, I wanted to welcome the changes that are happening. You can't expect metal to be used daily as glass and plates and adornments. People don't do that. Things change. But we need to be able to accept that change and use that change for the betterment of the craft, just like it was done in Nokshikata. So Dhamra itself, and my focus area for this project, was in a road called Dhulivita, which connects the Dhamrai Upojala to Dhaka-Aricha highway, which is a major highway for our country. And one of the things that was important is that there is a Roth Khola or a Roth Jatra that happens in that area every year. And interestingly, that is the largest Roth Jatra in the country. Around 150,000 people join that procession every day for the 7 days a week that it happens. And there are some things that arose because of that specific reason. One of them being this very important road actually gets stopped or blocked during that time of the year. As a result, there are already alternative routes that have already been built in that area. And it also means that my original point that the craft and the people who need to be connected, people do come in this area during that time of the year. And if you look at this map, my focus area is very close to very important landmarks that are near Dhaka. We have Sri Kishoto, we have Jahangarnagar University, and for our younger crowd, we have Fantasy Kingdom and Northern Park, which is very near to this site. It's just 40 kilometers from Dhaka. So these are some images of the place that I'm talking about. It's not only culturally rich because of the craft, it's culturally rich because of the buildings that are in this area, which dates back to 100 to 150-year-old old. And the last picture that you can see is the picture of the rock that happens every year. It was once burned, but it was rebuilt because of the community that it is. So what are some potential strengths of the focus area? The area not only has a rock which houses a lot of people around the year, but it also has several temples, which not only makes it a spiritual place for a large community, it also shows that this community is accepted, and the confusion or the problem that we have in a lot of other places in Bangladesh where minority groups are not taken into account, this is not the case here. Because this very small 1 kilometer area of my focus area has 9 temples. But although this entire area is now currently is a Muslim majority area. Along with that, not just the temples and the rod, which gives it a more spiritual aspect, it also has buildings, old buildings, which gives it a more historical aspect. Along with that, there are shops and accommodation. It's a mixed-use area which houses various kinds of. But art is enough. But if they were there, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now. So so my solution to that was we need to tackle each of the problems that metal itself faces and this area specifically faces separately. For example, like I was saying, cheaper alternatives or less time-consuming alternatives could be actually tackled with skill development. Currently, in Dhamrai, there are just 4 metal shops, and in those metal shops, there are certain small skill exchange programs that happen with artisans from Nepal and Sri Lanka. So this can be done in a more structured way, that a larger group of people actually get to share their skills, because they do this entire metal casting thing in a different method. But they are interested in the method that we use because this has been going on for thousands of years now. Along with that, in order to bring in people, we need to give more tourist attractions to this place, because a lot of people might be interested in the history, but there are others who have absolutely no connection to metal or metal's history or the historical buildings. So there comes the other cottage industries in Sabah or in Dhamrai. So there are mainly 4 cottage industries. 1, handicraft, metal, jewelry, and pottery. So amongst these 4 industries, metal itself is housed in the street that I've been speaking about, and pottery, gold jewelry are around this area. So what I proposed was creating a dynamic hub in this focus area, which actually houses all the 4 different kinds of cultural activities and cottage industries. In that way, a person who is not interested in metal might actually be interested in pottery or handicrafts. So this would increase the tourist or the consumer base at least by double. And when a person attends this place, they might actually be interested in metal as well. So there were a few interventions or policies that I proposed during my paper. One of them were, so this is my focus area, and my main point was, without hampering the actual urban morphology of the area and how the neighborhood works, I wanted to include the new cottage industries that I've been talking about. So for that, my main aim was to just demolish or replace three one-story shops, and how I will replace it, I'll come in the next slide. So along with that, to create a heart in the middle of the focus area, which houses all these different cottage industries, make this entire road a pedestrian road, so that when you walk in a road, you see more, or you spend more time in that road than when you're in a car or a rickshaw. And thirdly, connect the disconnected dots of temples and old buildings and craft shops. So my more macro invention, along with creating a center and small pockets for these shops, were thickening the edge of the road. And not thickening it in a physical manner, but more of in a characteristics manner, or how the road and the edge of the road has been used. So for that, what I proposed was that the ground floors of all the buildings, which are already somewhat used as shops, could be completely used for commercial purposes, not only for shops, but also restaurants and cafes, and in more agriculture way, tea stores, which not only brings in people, but it also gives you the impression of a larger road or a larger space for public. Along with that, it also ensures the privacy of the people who are living in that area, because at the end of the day, the most important people are the people who are in that area. So this ensures privacy, and the building owners will get more revenue or more rent per square feet, because renting out a shop is more profitable than renting out a residence on the ground floor, which usually people try to avoid in our country. And this also, and as I said, the one-story building, if one-story shops, if they're housed in the ground floor, this opens up places which could be used for community gathering, for hot bazaars, and other activities connected to tourism. So this was my proposal, where there were in order to house the tourism facilities, there were options for boutique hotels, galleries for metal, and library and documentation, and archives for metal. And the heart could be used for various reasons. For example, during Roth or during other cultural activities, it could be used for fairs, for example, Poila Boishakh and Eid. And for the other time, it could be used as a weekend market or a community gathering space, which they lack currently. So this was the before and after of the project that I proposed. So lastly, I'd like to conclude with the fact that this is just one of the 8 places in Bangladesh which works with metal craft, which still has metal craft in it. And it's almost time. So I'm not saying this exact module could be used as a model for the rest of the places, but this could be a start, and this could give a way for the challenges that each of the sites face. So thank you.
Thank you. Our next presenter is